Konnichiwa! Welcome to the second episode of the third MEB Podcast. I want to thank all the service members, families, and SOFA members out here in Okinawa with me, tuning in, instead of going out in town and eating indoors. Oh man, I hope that joke ages poorly. But anyway, I'm your host, Corporal Caroline, and I'm very happy to be here. Let me introduce our next guest. I'm happy to have Master Guns Leander here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about how long you've been with the MEB for?
So I've been with the MEB a little over 2.5 years now. I came into the Marine Corps in January of 93, went through Parris Island, SOI East, and then I went out as a tow gunner to First Tanks Tows in 29 Palms. I came out to SOTG 3 MEF in Okinawa back in 96. From there, I went to Small Craft Company in Camp Lejeune before it was later disbanded. With Small Craft Company, I managed to go on 2 Unitas's, South American training cruises with West African training cruises attached. And then went to 2-8, where we went to Afghanistan, the 26th MEU in Iraq, and then did about a year at Headquarters Battalion, 2nd Marine Division, working as a company gunny there. Then I went out to McTaug, where I did another instructor duty, teaching the Operations Tactics Instructors course. And then from there, went to MWSS 374, Marine Wing Support Squadron, and did 2 years there as their Air Base Ground Defense NCOIC. And then I went to 2-2 and we did Beef Surf 13, Black Sea Rotational Force 13. And then we did Special Purpose MAGTF Crisis Response Africa in 2014. Then I went to ITB for about a year, and getting promoted out of that job, I went to 3-6, and we did the 24th MEU. And then I went back to SOI for a year as the ops chief for SOI, and then I came out to 3rd MEB.
How do you like Okinawa?
Okinawa's fine. I mean, being my second time out here, I knew a little bit what to expect. My primary reason for coming back here was because I've been married since the last time I was out here, and I wanted to bring my wife out of country because she had never been out of country before. So this was an opportunity to get her to see a foreign land and travel with me where she can't travel to the other places I go.
Does she like it here as well?
There's aspects that are good about being on the island, and there's aspects that are disappointing. I mean, she has a very strong family orientation, and all her family's on the East Coast, as far as her children, so she misses them a lot. Got her into snorkeling, didn't manage to get her into diving, but she enjoys snorkeling.
Would you say that's both your favorite activity here in Okinawa, or do you have something else you like to do, maybe hike, surf?
No, we hike and stuff, but as soon as we got the mask on her and she got comfortable, she just absolutely enjoys snorkeling. So she would do that over anything else pretty much any day that I can get her out there doing it.
So that's one of my personal favorites as well. I can see why it's popular around here. So the main focus of today is ACM. I was hoping you could tell us, the meaning, what is it besides just another acronym in the Marine Corps? What's the purpose of it? And, who assigns us the mission?
Okay. So ACM is the Alert Contingency MAGTF, Marine Air Ground Task Force. The purpose for us here is to be able to do a large range of military operations so that we can rapidly respond to a crisis and limited contingencies within the U.S. Pacific Command area of responsibility, which encompasses a large area ranging all the way from west of India to pretty much Hawaii and the western shore of the U.S. So it's a fairly large swath of land that we actually cover in regards to the Alert Contingency MAGTF. So who's in charge? For humanitarian disaster relief, it's primarily the Department of State that will send a message down or actually a crossover to Department of Defense, and it will come down through the U.S. Pacific Command and come down through 3rd MEF for tasking. And then once we arrive on scene, you'll have the embassy personnel and the Department of State personnel being USAID and what has been renamed from OFTA to BHA, which is the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, who will work within country, but it will primarily be a Department of State action for humanitarian relief type missions. But being that we can cover that full range of military operations, it can be anything from non-combatant evacuations, NEOs, or limited crisis as far as actual armed conflict and crises. But we can hit that almost a complete range of military operations, and working for 3rd MEF as our immediate hire, and then Department of State for the one category. And then if we wind up doing a joint mission and being a joint headquarters underneath the construct of the mission, then we could work directly for U.S. Pacific Command or the Indo-Pacific Command.
Is there a requirement on how quickly we have to be ready and respond?
So for the command element, the forward command element portion of the command element, the response time is a 12-hour response time for our first echelon falling on. Behind that, the response time is 48 hours.
And can you give me a few examples of ACM responses that we've done in the past, as the MEB?
So we've done, it's mainly humanitarian disaster relief type missions. We've been down to the Philippines a couple times for that. We've been to Nepal, and we've been to mainland in response.
I don't think a lot of Marines know that we've taken part in humanitarian efforts in mainland. Yeah, it's interesting.
What was the 2011 Tohokia? Yeah, the 2011 earthquake and tsunami disaster relief mission. We had the forward element up there in mainland Japan.
I think a lot of Marines, when they think disaster relief or anything ACM related, they think Philippines, Korea, maybe some of our island allies nearby, but they don't really think of mainland. So we're about to watch a video about Operation Damayan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Operation Damayan.
On November 8, 2013, Typhoon Haiyan made landfall in the Republic of the Philippines. With sustained winds of 185 miles per hour, it became one of the strongest storms in recorded history.
This looked like an F5 tornado, 60 miles wide, that flattened everything in its path. The devastation was unlike any typhoon or hurricane that I've ever seen.
Before the debris could settle, Marines from 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade deployed from Okinawa, Japan, and began to fly aid and supplies to those suffering in the hardest hit areas.
From the first day we got there, we emphasized that we were there to provide a unique capability, to provide things that could not in fact be provided by the Armed Forces of the Philippines and by the government and the people of the Philippines themselves.
We're bringing food and water to people that are thirsty and hungry. The relief on their faces was immediate. People coming up to us saying, as soon as we see an American helicopter, we know we're saved.
They started on Monday with C-130s, and on Tuesday they started with V-22s. Our MV-22s proved absolutely vital to provide a capability, a life-saving capability to the people of the Philippines.
After 2 weeks of round-the-clock operations, the unique capabilities of the Marines were no longer required. Joint Task Force 505 began a coordinated retrograde, allowing the armed forces of the Philippines, non-governmental organizations, and other friendly nations to continue the ongoing relief effort.
We worked until the Filipino government was able to restore infrastructure and take over for themselves.
Tremendous capability represented by the Navy Marine Corps team, but one that would not have been capable had we not been forward present.
Operation Damayan highlighted the importance of having Marines forward deployed as the expeditionary force in the Pacific. The Marines were able to provide more than 2,400 tons of relief cargo and evacuated 21,000 victims from some of the most devastated areas of the country. The United States Marine Corps is committed to supporting humanitarian assistance and disaster relief throughout the Asia-Pacific region and around the world.
So what we just heard was a video pertaining to Operation, God, I really hope I pronounced this right, Damayan? Damayan? Yeah, from November 2013. Can you tell us about a little about what we heard in that video, Master Guns?
Well, one of the key things stated is that we provide specific resources that are not available through NGOs, non-government organizations. So what we bring to the fight really is heavy lift in the terms of aircraft and helicopter or tilt rotor support, and being able to move large amounts of equipment in a relatively quick time frame before you can get the commercial carrier set up and trucking equipment in. We also provide heavy equipment in terms of clearing equipment for roadways and such, and also the ability to do water generation for clean water, which is one of the key things. Most of the HADRs that I've seen in recent history has gone with our specific capability to do vertical lift and transport supplies into relatively remote areas and get them to the people that need them.
And 3rd MEB had a part in all of that, or did we provide a specific part of that relief, or?
So 3rd MEB is the command element. In this case, it was the joint command element for JTF 505, the Joint Task Force 505, which is a non-standing task force for the joint humanitarian relief effort. So when the commander of U.S. Pacific says stand up Joint Task Force 505, 3rd MEB will normally get assigned as the command element for that task force to do humanitarian assistance and disaster relief.
Do you think that the Marines at the time ever thought that they were going to be part of this mission, this disaster relief, this ACM?
I want to say my thoughts on that is when you first come in, you don't really think in terms of that. You see it, that it's done, but you don't really think of that as your primary mission. But we do a lot of disaster relief and humanitarian missions, and also Department of Defense assistance for crisis in the U.S. So everything from the hurricanes in the U.S. up and down the coast and all the way down into Puerto Rico to the humanitarian system assistance for Ebola in Liberia. If I got that right, I think it's Liberia. I mix up all my L's within the region. But on the west coast of Africa, we were there several earthquakes in the Pacific regions, and we'll get to one of the earthquakes next, but as we discussed before, the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and then the typhoons within this region. We've gone to the Philippines several times for the typhoons, so to think that you don't have a chance of responding to a humanitarian assistance is probably not realistic. You probably have as much of a chance of responding to humanitarian assistance nowadays as you do being in an armed conflict.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important that Marines know that, especially. I think it's really important that 3rd MEB Marines know that, considering that we talk about ACM a lot, and we don't really, think will happen to us. We think that we're the exception. Sometimes it feels like a handful of Marines.
Well, we've been lucky in that sense because as we have done the disaster relief in the past, USAID and the non-government organizations have been building up the response structure within the area, along with the military, training the militaries of the other countries to respond to natural disasters in that area. And over the course of the time, through training and building up infrastructure, we've literally worked ourselves out of a job in some aspects to the fact that the countries can do it themselves now fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
And it would only be a major disaster that would actually pull us in for our specific capabilities, because we have built that infrastructure in countries like the Philippines that are prone to this type of natural disaster.
Which is the goal, of course.
Yes. It's a huge win.
So you spoke of Nepal, and we're about to watch a video on that, and we'll get your response after that.
U.S. military earthquake relief ramped up considerably today in Nepal. Speaking at the U.S. Embassy Annex in Kathmandu, Lieutenant General John Whistler, commander of the Joint Task Force 505, said 7 Marine Corps helicopters flew as many missions in one day as they did the entire time in country.
Today's the beginning of what will be sort of the norm for us. Today we intend to fly another 19 flight hours, so basically flying today what we've flown cumulatively since we started flying operations. We'll do 14 sorties, almost the same as we've done to date. We'll transport another 12 tons of cargo. We're very proud to be here and be a part of the team to help Nepal. Personally, I'm privileged to command a great bunch of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are very anxious to help the Nepalese people and to help the Nepalese Army as we engage in this.
According to U.S. Ambassador to Nepal, Peter Bodie, one of the main challenges is time. Monsoon season here starts in 4 to 5 weeks, and getting the people of Nepal shelter will be a large priority to relief operations. Reporting from Kathmandu, Nepal, I'm Corporal Thor Larson.
So I have a question, Master Guns, is that we heard in the video that there was multiple members of different branches, Marines, Air Force, Navy, Army. Was that an example of a mission carried out by the Joint Force? If I'm saying this right, Joint Task Force?
Yes, it was a joint task force, first of all. Mm-hmm. But some of the military organizations and agencies that were in that country were already in that country for training and other missions. And it just happened that because of the natural disaster, they could easily respond, and they started to help out as soon as we got the request for help, which is part of the process, the request from the country for the U.S. to come in and assist them and to allow military personnel to come in to do that assistance. But yes, it was surprisingly effective when you look back at what occurred there and how many people actually were able to respond and work. There were also other countries, some competitive countries, some of our competitor countries that actually came in to do assistance too. So China came in to help Nepal also.
Wanted to point out that these missions tend to be more dangerous than we conceive. Unfortunately, in Nepal, we lost the lives of 2 Marines, Corporal Medina and Lance Corporal Hug. Both perished on May 12, 2015 during this mission. Do you think Marines have fully grasped the fact that these missions are not only possible, but also may result in
the ultimate sacrifice?
What I think is we know and understand that we're in a relatively dangerous business, even in peacetime, that there is an inherent risk to everything we do. The number of flight hours that we put on our helicopters and MV-22s, the number of hours we put on Humvees, the number of hours we expect Marines to work. I call them the not-so-funnies, but as I read through the reports, there's more injuries and damage that goes on a daily, mishaps and stuff like that you just don't realize throughout the Marine Corps. Being in the Marine Corps as a whole is inherently dangerous. The operations that we do are inherently dangerous. Nepal is a high-altitude country, which creates different problems for the air wing as far as transporting through that area. When we operated in Afghanistan in the high-altitude portions that I was in, we had to fly through corridors because we couldn't fly over the mountaintops. And I imagine the same was very much true of Nepal. And nearing the monsoon season, you get into weather issues and stuff like that. So there's any numbers of things that can result in casualties and even deaths. And that's part of the responsibility of the leadership, is to analyze that and conduct the risk management to try and limit it as much as possible. But there's some things in life that are just straight unavoidable.
I think we were talking about this earlier this week, Master Guns, about how that plus other environmental factors, disease, weather, stuff that we don't encounter day to day in really any of our training or in Okinawa, is more of a risk than we think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, anytime you go into a disaster area or a conflict, the basic sanitation within the environment is going to be greatly decreased. So you're going to be living in squalor, in places where you can get diarrhea, dysentery, any other number of diseases that you wouldn't usually associate with the more pleasant areas that we go to.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about MEB's preparation for these kind of events. ACM drills, what makes them up and why are they important?
So the ACM drills are important because it's in preparation, and because as the MEB headquarters, we are only the command element portion, and in order to do our job, we have to bring other individuals like our ComDet, security, and if we need trucks, and just whatever we need for that particular mission, we have to bring them in and bolt them on to the command element so that we can go forward and do our mission. So we need to do the ACM drills so that we can get all the supporting agencies for that prepared in order to execute it in the time frames in which we want to execute it. If you don't rehearse the logistics of even the basic movement from Camp Hansen down to K5 right on Kadena or over to Fatima and from Camp Schwab, then the simple thing like a 1 hour movement can get greatly messed up.
And a lot of Marines that are not in the 3rd MEB are unaware that we have a packing list for these kind of events, these drills. And Marines are typical in the fact that they like to whine. And one of the things they whine about is the gear list. And for example, cold weather gear, right? Can you tell us why that's important?
So as I designed the current gear list, there's some things on it that I consider completely optional and based on the individual. A lot of people will put them as mandatory. I'm not really one for using chapstick, and I consider that an optional item. I'm not going to make it mandatory for anyone to bring chapstick. But for the cold weather gear, I specifically put it on because there are regions during certain times of year that are cold and do get snow. And this is the minimum protective layers in order to get there. There's some regions of our area of responsibility that we would have to go out and seek out extreme weather gear in order to operate in that, which would add another layer of complexity in our logistics in order to get out the door. But it is far easier to take something off a gear list and say, don't bring this, than to have people find it. So because the MEB does basically stay packed 365 days a year, ready to go out the door, it is far easier to just organize this and then whatever is not needed for the mission just to set aside.
For the kind of events that we prepare for with ACM, is there a individual readiness and family readiness involved with these kind of things?
Yes, absolutely. At a minimum, you want to make sure that you have your wills and powers of attorney up to date. There's actually several lists, and there's a particular one for Okinawa, the Okinawa Area Emergency Evacuation Plan, that everybody with a family should definitely go through. And it gives you a whole list of everything that you should prepare and have ready in case you have to evacuate your family from Okinawa. But a lot of what's in the evacuation plan is actually required for even our non-married individuals without family that they should have ready and should think about.
Yeah, for people that can't see it, it looks very in depth based on the size of the binder and the list that you have, Master Guns.
Yeah, I mean there's multiple forms. I won't read them all, but there is a MEF order out there, and I'm trying to stay away from the orders. I read them enough.
I don't know what you're talking about. The peak of entertainment, Master Guns, is reading the orders over the podcast, you know?
Yeah. But it's important to have your family life together so that you don't have to worry about that as you go out the door, so that you know that regardless of what happens to you, even in the most extreme cases, your family will be well taken care
of. As I understand, Master Guns, you're coming up on retirement. Is that right?
In one fashion or another, I will most likely be retired before February of 23.
You excited? It's kind of a bittersweet thing, or?
I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Well put.
Yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps has been a lifestyle for so long. I mean, it's a little over 28 and a half years now. Come January, it'll be 29 years. It's a long time.
So you've had a lot of experience in the Marine Corps, so you've seen different generations. Do you have any advice for the next generation of Marines?
I guess my biggest advice and the biggest thing I'm pushing as I work my way out the door is to take advantage of your economic situation within the Marine Corps. Your ability for the newer Marines to use the blended retirement and get 5% in matching so that you can work towards a savings. As we discussed the other day, there's an ability for you to use compounding interest along with your TRS so that you can have a substantial life savings when you reach retirement age of 65. And if you're budgeting correctly, you can still enjoy yourself, sometimes quite well, and still plan for a financial future.
You saying that all my paycheck shouldn't be going to my charger right now back at home?
Probably not. If you sat there and budgeted and like 50% of your money is going out the door into bills, you probably have the wrong budget. You should probably rework your budget so that you try and get your monthly bills and expenditures down to about 25%. You should be able to do about 25% in savings, and then you can have 50% of your paycheck going into whatever you want: entertainment, food, sporting events, things of that nature. And if you sit down and do it right, it's not that hard. I mean, I was talking to one of the Marines the other day, and I said, "What do you get paid?" He's like, about $1,000 a paycheck. And I said, that's basically what I'm paying myself right now, is about $1,000 a paycheck. I make a little bit more than that, but I have a considerable amount of my money going into savings and investments right now. I did have a large portion of it going into 2 houses, but I sold a house and then paid off the second one. And I'm selling that second house right now. And the money that I had going to paying for the mortgages on the 2 houses now is going directly into savings. And I didn't touch it towards expenditures because I already have a plan for expenditures. So I can, and we're not confining or restricting ourselves in our spending beyond what we've done as far as restrictions for our budget.
That's some good advice. I think a lot of Marines definitely need that from what I've seen. Well, I want to say thank you for joining us, by the way. It's good to talk about ACM. I was actually talking to a major that just left the MEB, Major Hoffman. He said there's a reason that the MEB is called the tip of the spear, even though every unit seems to say that. No unit ever says, oh, we're the shaft of the spear, we're the bottom of the spear. But it's good to talk about the importance of MEB within the Marine Corps and where we're at right now. So I appreciate you coming and talking about that, Master
Yes, definitely. I mean, the MEB is a unique command element within the Marine Corps as far as command elements go, and just the nature of what the MEB is allows us to be more flexible and be able to do the unique missions that we have done.
Again, special thanks to Master Guns Leander for coming here for an interview. Now we're getting on to our MEB history facts. And a lot of people know that the MEB has been deactivated, reactivated, and, called many different names, including the time we were reactivated in 1927 in Quantico by none other than Smedley Butler himself. At the time, Brigadier General Smedley Butler. A lot of Marines don't know, especially even in the MEB, that the MEB has a long history of reactivation, deactivation, and with some great names in it, like Brigadier General Smedley Butler. But again, thank you for tuning in. This concludes our second episode of the podcast. I want to say again, don't forget to be ready, resilient, and relevant at all times here at the 3rd MEB. And I can't wait to make the 3rd episode. Thank you again for tuning in.